G'day again. I'm just going to keep going live here about these disgusting misogynist laws in Australia that keep permitting male murder of women. And we had two in one last 24-hour period. We had two. Like, we own them, we don't. A lawyer, 34 years old, in the Crown Plaza Hotel over in Perth, and a mother of 4 children, Filipino woman origin woman in South Australia, whose youngest 2 were in primary school. Both murdered by men whose penises had been inside them. In the case of the lawyer recently, and I had some retard, I'm going to use that word here, being a very old-fashioned word. Mentally retarded, I would say actually emotionally retarded and obviously intellectually retarded person here. Because retarded is actually a word, you know, it's only people's ascribing of something derogatory to that word that made it derogatory. You know, words in themselves are worth nothing, of course. Laurie Anderson, wasn't it? So language is a virus. So we have... again, within a 24-hour period, 2 women who were murdered by men whose penises were inside them recently. And I had the fascinating, sorry about the noise, it's noisy, fascinating experience this morning. Literally for the first time in my life, you know the term elevator pitch? Like, you've got to give someone the elevator pitch. That's the pitch, the sales pitch you give to them. If they get into an elevator unexpected on a floor and you don't know how long till they get out, and then you have to sell your idea very quickly, like the elevator pitch. My local member literally got into the elevator this morning and she had completely rejected me, unbeknownst to me, because I have not got the memo yet, but I did get the AEC, the Australian Electoral Commission, generated letter welcoming me to her constituency down in Wollongong. Hello, Alison Byrne, MP. Burns, B-Y-R-N-E-S. And for 12 weeks, I have tried to get before her 4 times in person in her office and 5 or 6 times in email. And I looked up, not expecting her to get in. Obviously, I didn't know she lived anywhere near me. And I said, hello, Alison Burns. She looked at me. And she'd only come past me once before on her way into her front interview room to interview another constituent when I was at the front office going, hi, can you please speak to me? This is kind of urgent because my daughter's turning 12 soon and he's the abusive male parent who used to be my partner, who I left while I was pregnant and operated daycare, blah, 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 could tell you more. You've got it all below in these feeds here, in these emails. These voice to pieces to camera. All the information's there. I'm pitching. So she comes past me and clocks me. So she must see thousands of people a week. And so I'm not expecting her to remember me, of course. But I remembered her and said to her by name. And she had a couple of things in her hand, but I stuck out my hand to press the flesh. I think it's the polite thing to do usually when you meet someone. And I was trying to make it formal. She was dressed formally. I was not, unfortunately. And I had not got the memo at this stage other than her AEC generated letter saying, welcome to my Cunningham, welcome to Cunningham. And I'm happy to hear about any concerns you may have. Please call my office. But not if I actually already had. Because her diary manager, who has dismissed me out of hand every single time I've called, not like her excellent new one-day-a-week policy advisor who used to be coincidentally involved in the family law court space as a lawyer. His name's Ian, ironically. He had given me an hour and a half of the time of day, put me on to a woman who was a lawyer. I phoned her up. She charged $500 an hour and told me she was busy anyway, so even if I had the money, couldn't afford it. I mean, it's getting up to Christmas, so all those parents who aren't going to see their children again, and I'm putting on a brave face, obviously, because as you've seen from my previous broadcasts here, I cry myself to sleep at night and I shake viscerally with essential tremor from trauma all through the night and have nightmares. And I read some of the psychiatrist reports out in the last couple of broadcasts, so you don't need any more proof of that. I mean, anyway, so I gave her the elevator pitch. Literally, in an elevator. And I was pitching hard. I went Tom Gleeson-esque on her ass. And I just went, hi, but and she sort of acted immediately, kind of confrontedly, and then indicated non-verbally that she didn't want to stick her hand out, and I should have withdrawn at that point and said, oh, sorry, you're carrying things. And then I got to the ground floor and stupidly presumed that everyone was getting out. Of course, she was going to the basement to drive out. And so, oh, sorry, you're not getting out here. I said, well, maybe we could have that meeting sometime, right? Like, I phoned 15 minutes after they opened and asked for her diary manager, and finally got her diary manager. I've got her once before, don't know her name. I write them down normally, but in this case, I choose to forget. I guess it's possibly subliminal, because she said, oh, no, haven't you got the memo? I was like, no, I haven't got the memo. What was it? We sent you out a letter last week. I was like, well, it's Wednesday. No, I haven't got that one. Sorry, what does it say? No, I'm guessing already. No. So why? And she said, we're not going to get involved in your family law court case. I said, look, stop. I know about the separation of powers, okay? The judiciary, the parliament, and theology, the religious idiots. I get that they're not meant to talk to each other in a democracy. By the way, I do have a degree from a tertiary institution, and you don't need one of those to read. And you certainly don't need one of those to listen to the news or watch a documentary. And I said, please stop, because you're giving me a straw man argument. And then, of course, stupidly, I presumed that she even knew what that was. And of course, as we all know, straw man arguments, when you set up a false premise and then defeat it. And so you think you've won the argument, even though you're arguing with the premise of an argument that no one was positing in the first place. So, whoever she was tried to tell me that they'd already sent me a no. Like, no, you can't. As Bill Leake, the great Australian political cartoonist who stuffed up at the end, once said, although in Bill Leake's defence, although the entire of left-wing Australia liked to hate him in the end, and he did point this out in his Un-Australian Cartoons of the Year volume, he said everyone accused him of losing his brain after he literally fell 4 metres onto his head directly off a balcony at John Singleton's house. Feeding birds, apparently, trying to feed birds, and he'd obviously fallen off the wagon as well, as he tells it, and then ended up in a coma, and his brain was swelling, so they cut his head open, and he hallucinated all these amazing situations that he described where he spoke to people as if they were really there. But what was also going on for Bill, which a lot of people didn't know, I guess, and I don't think he would mind telling the truth, because let's face it, he told it all of his life, and he was pretty accurate most of the time. I remember saying to a mate at the time, just before he died, when he was on with Lee Sales, and he was saying, I'm the least racist person on earth. I mean, and he didn't even defer like a lot of more cowardly people would have done. He didn't defer to his own marriage. He married a brilliant and amazing, lovely, stunning woman. I met her, Astrid. And she was the product of a black American, an African American GI who came into the Second World War, into Germany, and had a relationship with her mother and then left. And so, you know, she's beautifully a mix of, she is. There's no problem with saying beautiful, not like it matters, but to me, or to anyone who's got half a brain cell, I say, but I'm saying that she happened to be a stunning looking person as well as a very nice person. She's a teacher. That's usually a good sign. And except if you're Louise Gibson from Clovelly Public School and you ignored my little boy when he was in year kindy in 2014. And he was being kicked every day by Wolfie. And for 12 weeks I wrote to you, if you're watching this, and you ignored him, and his father had just died. And he cried every night in the bath saying this little boy was bullying him. So I closed my daycare service that I was forced to run to get away from the father of my youngest child, and took the loss on the chin. By the way, that is literally taking it on the chin. I've taken it on the chin literally in more ways than one. I was so grief-strickenly out of my mind with delirium of grief of the deprivation of my children one day that I was drunk and fell over. And for the first time in my life, I literally didn't see what was coming on the ground and tripped and took the entire weight of my body, which was substantial by then, full of medication from the wrong drugs, on my chin. And that is the result. So taking it on the chin, as Bill did, get back to the point, he put in his one of the last cartoons that the right-wing nutjobs in Australia at Sky News used as proof that he had been killed by the left and their pursuit of him over legislation in Australia that bans hate speech, essentially. And he had put a cartoon out, as we would mostly remember, where an Aboriginal police officer asks an Aboriginal man who's out of his mind drunk and stumbling around, says, here's your child, and infamously the Aboriginal parent replies, what's his name? And so the right wing used that. Bill, to get back to the point, argued genuinely that he was the least racist person on earth. His wife was part African and African American, and his current wife at the time that he was getting crucified in the public domain just before his heart attack, but he did smoke a packet of fags a day for 35 years. So, like, you know, the right wing are bullshitting on again, because, of course, if you smoke a packet of fags a day, you will die from a heart attack, most likely in your early 60s. My uncle certainly did. Lots of people I know certainly have. That will kill you. So the right wing advantageously, just like Peter Dutton lied recently and said, we've got to, this is a divisive referendum, when, well, no shit, Dick Tracy, we're already divided. They being Aboriginal people, 3% have poorer outcomes on every metric of life worth measuring, and so they're divided, and they're divided by the history of what we've done to them, and so they're already divided, and the Constitution already provides legislation that allows laws to specifically be made for natives. Anyway, poor old Bill Leak, he, what's not very oft discussed is that he had John Singleton gave him his career in the start by employing him as an artist in advertising. And at one point in Bill's life, he'd gifted temporarily on a you can hang it in your house but I still own it basis. He'd gifted John Singleton a painting by Bill Leak and of course there's I think 17 of his hanging in the National Gallery. He'd gifted a painting of Sir Donald Bradman. It'd be appealing to John Howard. Not like he was doing that, of course, because he didn't appeal to anyone. He had Brown Nose Day, remember, instead of Red Nose Day. So everyone was sticking their nose up the nose of John Howard at the time, and in the end he died saying, "That great man." And it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. So there's a few ideas up on the mat here, but the point of it was that the left wing were accusing him of being a brown nose to the right wing and Sky Media. But what wasn't often discussed was that when he fell on his head, he was obviously unable to pay his rent, not dissimilarly from so many women who are abused by men and need to leave quickly and can't find a house. So he was unable to pay the mortgage for a long, long while. It was 6 months minimum that he was out, 3 months in a coma or something hideous, and then recovery, which he never recovered from because there was obviously extraordinarily massive pressures on his brain and headaches unbearable. And, Jesus, that noise is loud. So what's not often spoken is that Rupert Murdoch, his employer, stepped in at this point to pick up the purse. And so in Bill Leak's cartoon book that I gifted my father for Christmas, so that's how I know, because I read the foreword, he accused his previously left-wing buddies of being egregiously awful towards him because he had fallen on his head and was therefore clearly deranged, and that would be the only excuse that he could possibly have for stumping for people like Murdoch and being against climate change being a man-made phenomenon and being pro-John Howard. And, it's hard to bite the hand that feeds. But someone like Bill, of course, did that for a living proudly all of his life. And this is that's not to besmirch his character. I'm only positing this because even someone as meritorious as he was, I believe, forced in the end to defend the indefensible because he had to eat. And all of his life, of course, he'd say, oh, that's not true because they could fire me at any minute. He wouldn't say that, but I'm saying obviously by logic of his actions alone, he could argue that they wouldn't. Didn't need to do that because he was paid to bite the hand that feeds, and he was paid to speak truth to power. Hilariously. The point of saying all of that, he loaned the painting of Don Bradman to John Singleton, and apparently John Singleton, who's obviously extraordinarily wealthy. G'day, John. You didn't call me back either when I was trying to get you to push the yes vote, so screw you. You're part of the problem, just like the people who own Kennards. Kennards Hire. Storage and tools. Tools for the boys. They funded the No campaign as well. Unreal. Taking up Australian space at a venue near you, and the very Australian space they were taking up, which they stole, well, we all did, off Aboriginal people, they were fighting against, just like Gina Rinehart, suing her own kids as well. It's good to be on the correct side of history rather than the right side of history, isn't it? So it's not really often described or mentioned in polite circles that John Singleton had a house fire, and despite his extraordinary wealth, the painting burnt down and was not insured by John Singleton. So Leake calls in his debt at this point, apparently. So the story goes, from people who actually knew him, and calls in his debt and says, oh, look, I'm going to have to sell that painting now because I was saving that up for my kids for a rainy day, but this is the rainy day. It's pretty rainy, like I'm in a storm here. Can you please give it to me? And Singleton goes, oh, well, while you were in a coma, there was a house fire and I lost it. And Bill, of course, would have said something unrepeatable at that point. And then assumed, of course, that it was insured. No. I don't understand how it wasn't insured. It's like, you're John Singleton. You can afford insurance even if all of your properties are flooding, which they're not up at Mount White, which is where Bill fell off his balcony. And arguably, I've got no idea what the, although I do actually, it's 1 metre is the answer. Your balcony is meant to be by local government law up there 1 metre, because I lived on the Central Coast, in a rainforest with 1 road in and 1 road out, and my beautiful 2 younger children and my oldest child visiting, and everything was well, and we had a boat, and there were rainbow lorikeets and king parrots and kookaburras and cockatoos and Matt and my children, music and food, and then there was an anomie, which I'm still in. A total levelling of everything you know, everything gone, and all hell breaking loose, and then a total vacuum of meaning. ANOMIE. Anyway, suffice to say, apparently it must have been that Singleton didn't offer to recompense him for the painting that he didn't insure. And so they fell out. And Singleton was not at his funeral. And the late and great Barry Humphries had a hiccup, literally, when he went over the road bump in his speech. He dropped his line, which no great actor does, but he was getting on, and he was obviously extremely sad, and because the night before he'd literally had his arm around his best mate, Bill, down at Bill Leake's right-wing attended launch of his book at Glebe Books, apparently upstairs for the IPA, who are, of course, responsible as well as Murdoch and his minions. And uneducated, entitled twats who have got no ability, as Hannah Arendt said, the failure of imagination. They've got no ability to comprehend or to even try to imagine 65,000 years of the oldest civilization on Earth here. So they fell out. I don't know how I got into this story. They fell out. And there was a point, and I'm going to get it any second now, when I moved my mind on something completely unrelated and the penny drops back in. Oh yeah, that's the point. So the straw man argument, that's why I launched off on Bill Leake, because of course he was saying you can't accuse me of being racist because the cop in the cartoon that I did, that, you know, had the half of Australia hounding him, was black, an Aboriginal, and so was the delinquent father of the child, saying, when the cop was bringing the child back, stooped over at the back and saying, here's your son, and then the drunken Aboriginal man says, what's his name? And Bill kept on trying to point out, well, not only am I not racist, and he didn't play the I've married two people, because by then he was also married to a woman who apparently he respected as much, if not more, than Goya, his wife, Gung, who had survived incredible childhood trauma in Southeast Asia and who had a lovely young daughter, Natasha, who he married immediately, loved her, and he specialised in stealing wives off Germans. His first wife was dining with a German when he met her at a table in a restaurant overseas when he was young, and he poached her, and then his second wife was married to a German when he poached her too, apparently. So, German poacher, go Bill. That's it. I'm only laughing because I hope that they'd be Nazis. Point of it being, it was a straw man argument mounted that he was racist, and he was trying to say, no, I'm not. These two people are both black, and the black cop is saying, here's your child, to the black Aboriginal man who was drunk, saying, what's his name? So he was crucified. In many people's opinion, Bill Leake was crucified for being racist when he was not racist in his practice, actions speaking louder than words. He was not racist at all. And the straw man argument there that outraged people on the left were positing because they were disgusted with the despicable presentation of like all black people being drunk, but of course he was trying to say, no, the police officer in my cartoon was also black and he wasn't drunk, so what do you say to that? And so the straw man argument that they gave me down Alison Burns's office today, Labor, unbelievably, in Cunningham, in the seat of Cunningham, and the seat of Cunningham voted yes. One of the few that voted yes. The margin was very slim, 51% to 49%. Ouch. But still yes. And so after 12 weeks of walking 4 times into her office, politely, then more insistently, then writing to her as well, today they gave me, to get to the point again, a blow-off, a straw man argument saying, no, we're not going to talk to you because we can't interfere with your family law court case. I didn't bloody ask them to interfere. That's what a straw man argument is when you set up a bullshit premise and then you argue against it. And of course, Trump's a specialist, all the narcissists are. And that's what my youngest child's doing, my children as well. So making a straw man argument, you know. Oh, she's not safe with her. I mean, bullshit asshole. I'm the one who ran the childcare for 4 years, and my eldest 2 children brought up under me are achieving highly, and yours older 2 children did not. So you got a straw man argument. And then I was given a straw man argument again today by my local member, having sent me an auto-generated AEC invitation form to come and meet her about issues that were pertinent. It goes like this. It's quite far in to get to the elevator pitch, which I described up the front of the video, and it goes like this. It was like, I told you yesterday, you can explain it to a child. You go to jail for driving your car after not paying your parking fine, even though your skill set hasn't changed one iota, and they cancel your licence, the cops catch you, you go to jail, but you steal a child from a parent in Australia, nothing happens to you whatsoever. So they bullshitted to me. I don't know whether they didn't have, and I genuinely don't know whether they didn't have the brains or the time, or the skill set to actually read what I wrote, which was, no, I'm not asking you to interfere because that's A, illegal, and I'm B, I'm not stupid, C, I can read, D, I've got a degree, and for 5, everybody who's got even a basic education in the arts in Australia knows about the separation of powers. You separate the judiciary from the lawmakers, from the theologians, from the religious men, and they always are men in this nation, in most. And so that's the separation, that's one of the fundaments of democracy, is the separation of powers, right? So I'm not trying to ask you to influence a court case that, by the way, doesn't yet exist, which is why you should go over with the elevator pitch and give to my fund. I'm not trying to get you to... And so I told this woman, I said, you didn't read what I wrote. I didn't ask you. It was illegal to ask you to interfere with a law case, for starters. And I didn't ask you to do that. I asked you to make a law ensuring that people who steal children from loving parents, and those parents who have family law court orders in their hands, as I do, the people who steal children against that have the punishment by jail, by criminalisation or severe financial penalty, threat of, and or the acquisition of their assets, just like the proceeds of crime laws, where they will come after you, put you in jail and take your assets back if you do that. And so don't lie to me and say that you're not going to see me because I'm asking you to influence my family law court case. I'm not. I'm asking you to fucking make a law, because it's clear that the moral hazard, as it's called in the legal system, argument here is that you're allowing a perpetrator to get away with murder. You're rewarding them. The moral hazard argument in Australian law is that you're rewarding somebody for doing the wrong thing. And so it's a moral hazard. And they just hung up on me. It's a fucking Labor female rep federally, so it's the right jurisdiction, the family law court, federal law court. Local, who's given me a letter saying, come along and tell us all about what concerns you. And I'm like, well, I've got a fairly comprehensive idea of what concerns me here. And bang, 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 there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. Hi, knock, 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 here it is, knock, knock, here it is, knock, knock, here it is. Nothing. And then like, no, we're not, no, you can't. That's where I started. I'll get there in the end. No, you can't. That was one of Bill's hilarious, one of his tens of thousands of hilarious political cartoons, was when he drew Julia Gillard saying, no, you can't. No, you can't. She's apparently, from memory, she was sticking out her hand to shake someone's hand and saying, no, you can't. And someone used that again. It was Philip Adams used it recently again in the... on the back page of the Sydney Morning Herald after the referendum, and he paraphrased it, yes, you can't. Sorry. So that's what Bill Leak's, he didn't paraphrase it, he directly ripped it off. That's what Bill Leak's cartoon says. Yes, you can't. Boy, am I tired. Like, I've just given up at this point, apologising for it, because, like I said, in every video below, I go and take a leak now, speaking of leaks. I didn't take a real one. You just can't sleep at all when you're in this situation. And your little girl's leg sends you a photo of her burnt legs where she could have died in a house fire, as is down further on my page here. And you can't protect her because you're being kept from her, because child support payments would be triggered if she was to stay any amount of nights over at your house because he's on 110 grand and you're not. And so also because part of his continuing abuse of you is to weaponise your children, just like Hamas did with Israeli children, just like the Afghanis. The Syrians have bombed the crap out of anyone who stood up to Assad. It's just, this is the tactic of men in war, is to use children and take them from you. And unfortunately, there's a couple of stories I know about where lots of so-called intelligent, educated women have participated in exactly the same thing, taking mine from me. And in my case, they even knew by professional, literally tertiary educated, long-term professional experience as well on the job as well as their education about the profound damage to child and mother that occurs when you take children from their loving parents. It totally fucks them up. And they try to tell you you can't have your child back because you're fucked up by something that they caused in the first place, which would be Joseph Heller's Catch-22. So there you go. There's the scenic route once again. Got around to it in the end. Bill Bleek's straw man argument they hung him for. And so I can only hope that my local Labor rep who invited me to come in actually listens to what I said, because it's about creating legislation that doesn't just overturn the presumption of shared care. It makes illegal and criminal the stealing of children against family law court orders that already exist of the child. And it threatens jail time and or criminal record and or severe financial punishment, including and or the acquisition of assets, because if there is no disincentive to take a child from a mother or father, then people don't have to inconvenience themselves by travelling. They don't have to inconvenience themselves by paying child support if they're on a higher income than the other parent. And of course, they can, if they're malicious and mendacious like my ex, can avenge their ex by using their children to weaponise them. Just like a war, just like Russians did in Ukraine, just like Hamas did with Israelis, just like Israel is now doing to the Gaza Strip's children, all 1.75 million of them, by starving them to death and cutting off their water and cutting off their food, cutting off their energies that run their only water because they're reliant on desalination for all water, and cutting off everything. It's just disgusting. And my children's cousin's cousin got on here today earlier and said, oh yeah, way to go, good one. And then some incel idiot that obviously was known to him somehow, I don't know, some men's rights activist gets on and goes, well, men kill just as many men as they kill women, so fuck you, killing women's not the problem. Like, no, douchebag, you've totally missed the entire shit show. Yes, they are the problem. That's what we're saying, it's the men. And B, that's on the back of all available evidence. Long-term evidence is that it's because your power, male-dominated power structures in religion, government, corporations, and in your GDP spends of our budgets, everyone's budgets, even if you're a apex old bludger like Dave Ray or me, on a pension, you are still paying every 10% of everything you pay, obviously, is GST, goods and services tax. So we're all paying tax all the time. And then on top of it, got a job, lucky enough to have one, you got a third of what you're paying, unless you're lucky enough to be stinkingly rich like Malcolm Turnbull and bury it in a Cayman Island tax haven. So tax the rich, eat them, tax the churches, and make some laws that criminalise the thieving of children. Thank you and good night.